What's up, everyone? Thanks for joining for another episode of Cannabis Legalization News, Sunday's edition at 3 p.m. on Sundays. Today we're joined by Chris J. from South Africa NORML and Jeremy Acton from the Dagga Party for an international episode of Cannabis Legalization News. So let's just get right to it. Tom and Miggy, how's everybody doing? Chris and Jay, thanks for joining us. I know it's 10 p.m. there, so thanks for coming to speak the good word.
Yeah, we appreciate it so much that here's some more good words for the people that are watching, liking, and subscribing. Lauren, can you tell them how they can email and get a handful of Bovida packs? And I'm also going to throw in a Doob Tube. The Doob Tube has cannabisindustrylawyer.com. If you have any questions, go to that. And, of course, it also has our YouTube channel, Cannabis Legalization News. Today, we have another international edition. So thankful for having Chris J. from South Africa NORML and Jeremy Acton from the Dagga Party of South Africa. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for having us.
So what is the Dagga Party? Can you guys help explain that?
Okay, the Dagga Party was formed by some citizens who supported the legalization of cannabis in South Africa. We got together in 2009 in Robertson in the Western Cape of South Africa, and we adopted our logo and constitution and started communicating and mobilizing together. And then about 2 years later, we tackled our first little mini election for the local municipality in 2011. Since then, we got involved in the court case, which changed the laws in South Africa. So during that time, we weren't really politically active. We were more in the courts and legally.
Right. So the Dagga Party came before NORML out in Africa, or South Africa, rather?
I think NORML was before the Dagga Party, yes.
Oh.
I think, yes.
In South Africa, though, as far as the presence goes?
Sorry, Miggy?
Oh, as far as a presence in South Africa, was the Dagga Party the first pro-legalization party, or did NORML actually show up there beforehand?
I think NORML was there before.
I
definitely was. NORML was started in about 2007, 2008.
Oh.
So what is the legal status of Dagga or cannabis or marijuana in South Africa today?
Sorry, that broke up. Did you ask what is the legal status?
Yes. Is it legal or is it illegal in South Africa?
In South Africa, you may legally cultivate it and possess it and use it at home privately as an adult. There's no limit on the amount that you may cultivate as long as it's for your own personal consumption. You may not trade. You may carry cannabis on your person and in your vehicle and in your personal hand luggage or bag. But excessive quantities will land you up in a police station to answer to a magistrate.
Wow.
Is it true?
Okay. So like you said, you might get, the magistrates might come after you. How much is too much? How many grams?
Well, I believe that a person should be allowed to carry perhaps a month's worth of smoking materials on them at any time. And so for me, that would be about 500 grams.
About a pound. That's pretty cool. So
Yeah,
they call it grow and give. So grow and give is in Washington, D.C. It's also, I think, in Maine. And so why can't you sell cannabis in South Africa if it's legal? Chris J. from NORML, why can't you sell cannabis?
Well, to put me on the spot like that, you can't sell cannabis. They decriminalized the law to say that you can't sell it, but you can use it. It's for your own private use. But people are selling it. There are a lot of things happening online, offline, grow shops. and markets, actually markets online with cryptocurrencies, listed buyers and sellers, and it's really becoming a big market for quality cannabis.
It was amended in your constitution, right? Is that the law, the legal status right now? How it happened?
It's in the process of being the framework that they're putting in place. I think it's scheduled for September sometime, for a legal regulated cannabis framework, but it hasn't been changed in law.
But in South Africa in particular, it is legal for possession, but you can't sell the seeds, right?
You can't.
No, you
can't
cannot sell the
but
seeds. It's considered of the cannabis plant, and any part of the cannabis plant is illegal if you want to sell it or trade it.
Okay, so I want to go grow my 500 grams of cannabis legally in South Africa. Do I have to go into the woods and find a land race? Because I hear that South Africa, like Durban Poison, like you guys have storied, famous sativa land races down there. How am I supposed to get a seed?
Yes, we do. Well, you just ask your friends for the seeds from the good stuff that they grew last year. And I believe that if you privately transact in a private space as private consenting adults, then no one's got a thing to say about what you're doing. So, yes, maybe the seed is illegal, technically speaking, but we consider ourselves to be part of a cannabis culture, and we have a right to exercise our culture, even though the court didn't recognize our culture. They only recognize privacy rights. So we'll act within privacy rights and get our seeds and get growing.
That's interesting. So you're protecting the cannabis laws have come about for you guys more of a privacy act, a personal issue, not a civil rights issue. Is that what I'm kind of getting?
That's correct. Yes.
I don't know. I think privacy is a civil right. And if you don't got privacy, you ain't got much, man.
Well, they just passed that. Okay.
Yes, we have a section 14 right to privacy, and they gave it to us on the section 14 right to privacy in our home. And then we appealed against that because we also have privacy in person, in our physical body space, and in our possessions, according to our constitution. Now, the court hasn't, the judgment is in effect, and if the state doesn't make law by September, the judgment becomes the law. So we are enjoying the processes of that change already.
That's fascinating. Like in Illinois or in America, we have this thing called activist judges where you don't want them legislating from the bench, where the judiciary's role is to just say what the law says, not to make new law. But in this instance, it sounds like if the court ordered something, it sounds more like Mexico, where the court orders the legislature to do something, and if they don't, then it just becomes law. Where did that governance idea come from? Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think that they almost knew that the state is going to drag its heels and not create the legislation on time, and that the people who came to the court for their rights shouldn't be prejudiced by delays. So that's why they put that in. It is a very helpful situation, I must say.
I got a question because you talked about cannabis culture, and so that's what you guys are. I mean, I see you developed a great culture out there with your protests, with the dad couple got arrested and whatnot, but your history too for cannabis in South Africa. Can you tell me more about that? Because I used to joke when I used to be in the Navy and I'd go to Malaysia or something, and I would see people from India all over as laborers. And I know the laborers in India and Africa were the ones that brought the seeds out there. Is there any other like original land races though? What was the original cannabis culture for you guys? Like Bob Marley used to go to Ethiopia, but that's about it. What else is you guys?
Do you want to answer, Chris, or can I?
Why don't you guys both weigh in on that?
I'll share what I know. Maybe Chris can. We know that cannabis originated in the Central Russian or Asian continent, like north of Afghanistan and India. And it was traded down into India and Arabia. And a lot of trading boats came down the east coast of Africa all the way to the Cape Town. And a lot of cannabis seed was really being traded into the hinterland from the east coast. And when the Dutch arrived to colonize at the Cape Town,
we're not quite sure when the Dutch arrived, to be honest. Over here in America, can you fill us in when the Dutch arrived?
The Dutch arrived, well, the Portuguese came in about 1480. And the Dutch arrived to form a food company and a station to replenish ships in 1652. And they met local Khoi people who were mostly chewing cannabis, whereas the Dutch themselves were smoking it in long, elegant clay, slender pipes.
Wait a minute. Are you saying? So you guys have a cannabis culture of smoking cannabis, and the indigenous people were chewing the cannabis 400 years ago in 1625?
That's correct. Smoking was already established amongst the Bantu people, that is the Nguni tribes, the Black African people. But apparently the Khoi people in the Western Cape were chewing it more and not so much smoking it. But obviously, once they met the Dutch, they also began smoking it because the pipes were exchanged and everything like that.
Wow, think about that. Like, is this why Amsterdam, like this is why you tune into Cannabis Legalization News, and if you're learning something, give us them thumbs up and hit the subscribe button, because you just learned that 400 years is how long South Africa has had a cannabis culture. And, well, again, where's Amsterdam? The Dutch. You know, is that why Amsterdam's because they colonized South Africa in 1620? That's an interesting question. I don't know.
Another thing, I want to just also add that when the Dutch came here, the sails of their ships was made of hemp cloth, and the sailors' uniforms was hemp cloth, and there's ropes, and the corking between the planks of their ships was hemp cord with hemp oil in the hemp cordage. So there was a cultural use from the indigenous people, but the Europeans had already used it for industry and shipping and for their conquest. So there's quite a broad range of how hemp actually arrived at the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. It was a major part of that event. It was literally how people got here.
That's fascinating. Okay, so what type of strains do you find grow well outdoors in South Africa? Who grows? Chris, do you grow? Jeremy, do you grow?
Yes, no, I grow. I love growing. You can grow unbelievable. You can grow unbelievable weed in our climate, South Africa. We've got that thing called the Dagga Belt, and that's almost the most perfect tropical, good rainfall, long summer, hot summer months regions, and that covers half of Southern Africa. And it goes from Eastern Cape, the whole way through Lesotho, up to Swaziland, through Natal, up to Mozambique and Zimbabwe. Where statistics like in 2003, we were the fourth largest producer in the world of cannabis, those Southern African countries combined.
What type of cultivars and seeds, strains, what type of strains do you grow in South Africa?
A huge, wide variety, Tom. A lot of European Dutch genetics that have been coming here since the 1980s. I think there's still a lot of African genetics here, but I think they're hybridized with the European and certainly to a degree American genetics. But talking what we were talking about earlier, the history of Southern Africa, I think we also got a lot of hemp from the Indian side of the hemp coming from the Middle East. I think that's combined into a lot of our strains too.
Wow. I think we'd be remiss, for the people who are just ignorant of that, Dagga is cannabis, but what does Dagga come from, the word?
Some people think that it came from a very deep root word of the San people, which was tata, which meant inebriated or intoxicated. There is the word in the Khoi language called dacha or dachab, which generally represented this plant. And so when the Afrikaans government wanted to oppress this plant, it was officially made illegal in 1923 by Jan Smuts, the Prime Minister for the British Crown. And,
the heavy British again. The darn British. 1921. Yes. So your prohibition on cannabis predates the prohibition in America by over 10, 15 years. What did they call it? Did they use the word cannabis, or did they call it Dagga, or did they call it marijuana? What did they call it?
It was called Dagga. Just like in America, the word marijuana was a local colloquial word used by Mexican people, which then the oppressors took on in order to disguise what this plant really was, because everyone knew it was, everyone didn't know that marijuana was cannabis. So I think those oppressors, we used the same tactics here in South Africa, and the Dachab word became Dagga, and the word Ga in Afrikaans in South Africa is an expression of disgust. So the word Dagga became a very disgusting emotional word for everybody, and the press loved it, the police loved it, but now we're taking that word back for our own purposes. Whenever they report on us, they must use the word Dagga, and the Dagga Party is obviously more memorable by using that word than saying hemp or cannabis, we hope.
Yeah, I like that aspect of it, like taking the word back and not being scared of it, like with marijuana. But in ours, it's like a literally still the term of law. So like in South Africa, if you regulated cannabis, or if you legalized it, does it say like Dagga, or does it say cannabis for their laws? Because in America, the law still has the pejorative word as what's prohibited at the federal level, marijuana with an H.
Our schedules of our drug laws calls it cannabis. They also mention dronabinol and tetrahydrocannabinol as substances separate from the plant.
Awesome. Well, all right, Chris, what about this one? Can you help Paul out? South African varieties.
Yes, I see Paul Morona he's from Ecuador. He's a buddy on growersnetwork.org, and he's been talking a lot about these varieties that grow well in hot climates. I would say Durban poison, all the sativas. They are very well naturalized and localized to grow in the hotter tropical climates.
That's cool. We don't really get many sativas where I'm at because it's a business. And so the sativas, they take a long time to flower. And it's just not as profitable to try to grow sativas where you might need to keep that plant in flower for an extra month when you want to turn it over and make that money. So we have a lot of hybrids that they harvest between like 55 and like 75 days. And like some of those sativas, they might take 90 days plus. So if you're growing outdoor, I mean, you can let the plant kind of go, and just harvest it when it's ready, right?
Yes, you can let it go 13 to 15, 16 weeks, a pure sativa. I mean, people are still harvesting now. We almost right into winter now, and people are still harvesting.
We actually have a troll on our Facebook page right now. Like he's just like leaving all this marijuana.
I really hope it's
about prejudice and marijuana. You know,
it's Kevin Sabat, bro.
Oh, that would be awesome if Kevin Sabat is trolling us. That would be like a lifelong dream. Okay, for you guys down in South Africa, here in America, we have a guy called Kevin Sabat and Smart Approach Against Marijuana that still lobbies for the prohibition, the illegalization, the criminalization, and punishing people by arrest and taking all their stuff. Do you still have the prejudice down in South Africa against the cannabis plant?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Terrible people.
Do you think that's one of the reasons why you're not allowed to sell it?
I think they didn't want to condone a free-for-all market situation while the legislation was pending. I think the prejudice against cannabis still shows up in parental, parents who have separated and are now wanting to talk about custody of children. Cannabis is still used against the cannabis user as a reason for not having a right to their children, but that is slowly changing, so
that's
the amount that you make.
It literally happened in America, and so it's fascinating to see the exact same history somewhat playing out on a different continent, same plant, same story. And now in Illinois, those types of chicaneries amongst feuding parents that are divorcing and bitter toward one another, they really don't fly. But Miggy, what were we talking about? DCS out there with Mothers for Marijuana?
Yeah, last week we talked with Sarah Frank, and we were talking about how marijuana is still weaponized in things. But also, when we talk about your guys' law, when we talk about South Africa, it's just South Africa, right? You guys, South Africa itself is divided like the United States. Am I correct? Where
actually, it would be more like Europe. But
regionally wise,
they're like literal states. They're their own countries. So they're a country at the bottom, and then they would have provinces. Wait, do you guys? Does South Africa have a province or states?
Yes, Mickey, we do. We've got provinces, and we've got landlocked kingdoms. Lesotho and Swaziland are both within the South African borders, and South Africa landlocked it with our provinces. I think we've got about 5 or 7 provinces, and Lesotho and Swaziland within our borders.
And so just in South Africa, it's legal, but if I were to go to North Africa, totally different rules, right?
Yes.
Different rules for every country. Mostly illegal.
Mostly legal or illegal?
Illegal. Prohibited, yeah.
With your guys' rich history, though, do you see the hemp production coming up? We had a guest on months ago who was talking about hemp from Africa, and because there's such a low, it's a poor economy in some parts where you can't afford pesticides, so you can say, look, pesticide free. Is that in South Africa? Do you see a booming hemp coming?
I think that we might use our indigenous landrace sativas, which are actually quite reasonably high THC. But I really don't want to see awful hemp, low THC contaminating everybody's grows and lowering the quality of seeds. We must rather go for a high THC Dagga plant, which gives us the fibers and the medicine and the seed and the oil all in one plant. And
because
we need
because we have well, you're right, but we have hemp farmers on, and so they'll talk about the difference between how far apart you plant the seed. So if you just have enough of your landrace seeds and you plant it, every so many centimeters, it really has to grow up because it can't get all bushy. And the sativas, those are the taller plants. The indicas are usually the more squat ones. So it kind of makes sense, except somebody could come along and cut off the flowering tops of the female plant and have some fun. How terrible. Yeah.
No problem with that. I've got no problem with that at all.
Jeremy,
it should be
I love-
both. We should get many crops out of one grow, and maybe we plant it very close together. Then we might cut alleys in the area and leave some plants to go to a greater maturity, or prune them down and let them bush out. And in a similar grow season, you might get fiber as well as seed, as well as some medical bud. Well, I don't have a problem with seed in my bud, but maybe medicine extraction some people might have a problem with that. I'm not sure.
Right. If I'm going to put it into the extractor, I don't want a whole bunch of seeds in there. The seed has its industrial application for certain. So it's whether or not you want to have the seed, but then that's why you grow it in different types of ways. However, the seed issue would still come up if you have such outdoor grown. And so if you're going to have fields of it where you're not going to care about sexting the plant and yanking all the males, and you're going to try to grow it like hemp, that pollen will still be floating around. So if you have some sinsemilla grow 3 miles down the road, you might get seeds in those as well. Of course, I think you guys call it kilometers down there, right?
We call it kilometers, yes, Tom.
Yeah, not us.
And there's lots of bloody growing males, and it's terrible. It makes all our females outdoors seeded, and it's a thing we need to teach every single person. People are lazy out there. They leave males. Often they leave males.
Cross-pollination is definitely an issue. So is most grows are outside then in South Africa? What's your weather cycle like out there?
In what sense? Weather cycle? I mean...
what's the temperature? How much rain do you get? That type of stuff.
Well, we're looking at Celsius. Here where I am, we're a very low rainfall area for South Africa, but we're in a good growing region, and we get about 600 to 700 mils per year of rainfall.
That's a good size.
Going into now the low rainfall region where we don't really get much rain at all during June, July. And then it picks up over the spring, summer months, and we get the summer rainfalls.
Ooh. So in the dry season, you have to maintain, obviously, but it's still sunny enough, whatnot, to grow outside?
Yes, we can grow. You can grow. You can get here in the Eastern Cape. The bud comes out quite airy. It's very small, but you can get about 4 harvests per annum. 4 growing cycles.
Is it year long then outside?
Sounds like it.
In California.
One of the nice things about growing outdoors here is that I've seen fantastic indoor strains standing 3 meters high, full extent, unpruned in any way.
Wow.
They're normally best farmed, from what I can see, under white shade cloth, because you want to also stop helicopters from looking down onto the plants. So I think it's about 60% shade cloth. A white shade cloth gives us amazing diffused light, and the plants really like it. And so under that kind of arrangement, I've seen lots of sinsemilla happening, but maybe the locals in the area weren't also growers. It was fantastic grows.
Yeah, that would help. If nobody's growing any other plants around you, yeah, because then the pollen's going to be not in the air, or is likely to be in the air. How much yield do you get from one of those 3-meter monsters?
Anything above, I would say, 500 grams a monster, outdoor sativa. Anything over between half a kilo and a kilo.
Wow.
I think you're saying a pound.
A kilo a plant. That would be pretty cool.
So
yes.
I love
You've
Jeremy's
got to be prepared. Grow the plants from early on in the growing season, which for us is any time after the winter solstice, after say the 1st of July, and grow them large all the way to Christmas time and into the February, March of the next year before you really get the
plant? Wow.
outdoors. Okay, so that's when you can't use lighting schedules to actually force flowering you outdoors. So that's you're going with the sun, and that's when you max the grow season and water as much as you can to get them as big as you can by the time they go to flower.
But your guys' climate, though, is very nice all year round. It's temperate, 20 to 30 Celsius.
Yes, hot, nice and hot. High UV, ultraviolet. And as long as you're giving it the water, you're going to get really good terpenes and flavors. And if your genetics is going to allow you, it shows up well here.
Before this, the pandemic, I know like right now they're trying to get your market structured right now, but do you guys have public consumption spaces down there at all? What anywhere safe to do that at?
Sorry, I missed the words. Do we have markets? Did you ask?
Do you have like bars where you can go smoke weed? Like weed
lounges?
Bars. Yeah.
I do know that there are private where the privacy rule has been used by people who get together to smoke. They pay a membership fee. They go to pay quite a lot of money for expensive weed that might not be the best for the money, but they're happy to socialize in that context. And they're doing, those clubs have a faithful support. But I think we're still really loner stoners sitting at home smoking our weed and not really building larger groups and events, except the odd Dagga day that is organized in Johannesburg once a year. But that was cancelled because as a result of this pandemic.
Well, how often have you had Dagga Day? That sounds pretty awesome.
That is organized by the Dagga couple up in Joburg, and it's been going for about 5 years on the nearest day to the 20th of April, 420. And there approximately 4,000 to 6,000 to 8,000 people will gather for music, food, events, and the smoking of weed. And there's dab rigs where you can pay 30 Rand. That's our currency. It's like you guys, someone from America putting $30 down and having the biggest rip on a dab rig. And then once your friends have all laughed at you, then you go back to the back of the queue in order to get another hit. By the time you get, people go from their hit to the back of the queue so they can queue again.
A rand is how many dollars? Let's see here. Like $1 US equals how many rand?
18 Rand, about. Yeah, 17, 18. Terrible.
Yeah, but I think if you were going to do a dab at a bar, it would probably be about $30. Because like how many, it would depend on the weight of the dab. If you want a half a gram dab, that's easily going to be $30.
You mean 30 American dollars or 30?
Yeah, 30 American dollars. So it'd be 30 times 18 Rand.
Nah, man, I pay $3 here in the United States back in the day.
$3 for a dab?
Yeah, you just because the thing that's
the extract.
Buy
a gram dab extract for $75.
No, just a dab. Like, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
A dab you'd be able to get for maybe $4. You'd be able to get a dab.
Yeah, that sounds about right. They get a big slab.
How much does a dab weigh?
What's that?
They'll give you about half. They'll offer maybe about 0.2 to 0.5 of a
gram.
0.2 to 0.5 of a gram. But as soon as you cough and stop using it, that's the end of your dab. So you got to know what to do in that context when you're buying a dab.
But it sounds like Johannesburg is pretty accepting of the cannabis culture then.
They are very much organized and they're into their branding of products and medibles, and it's way more business orientated up in Johannesburg in the movement. Yes.
Lots of social clubs.
That's what I was thinking, because I mean, you don't have storefronts yet, so a place to smoke would be nice, or socialize. But you know, and you'll get there, I guess, when the time comes. But since Johannesburg sounds like Seattle to me, as far as like you have that one city that's willing to let everybody do a thing, and chaos does not happen. Tom was at the last Seattle Hemp Fest, and fortunately, he got to see one before this stuff. But I kept telling him, it's like, this is the most anticlimactic thing. Like, you get excited for a pot thing, and then you do it, and you're like, fucking nothing happens. This is kind of boring, actually. Is there good music on, or?
In the Western Cape, yeah, we have a club called the Helderberg Herbal Club, and we generally gather in outdoor venues, like on wine farms or somebody's farm where there's a barbecue area, and maybe about 50 or 60 stoners will descend on one place and barbecue together and smoke together and trade. And we pop up in various areas because there's no fixed venue. We keep it flexible, but that's great.
Yeah, let's talk about prices of dabs in Illinois. Like, this is one of the nice things about our legal rubric here in my state. I can go buy this right now. Like, I can check out on this website right now. This is my medical dispensary, but I can get a gram of live resin for $75. I can get a gram of sugar for $65 American. These are American dollars. The Rick Simpson's oil is for a gram is about $55.
Ooh.
Yep, there's a gram of OG Perps from Verano. That's $60. But so, like, you know, that's why I was saying, like, I bet it would be like $30 for a dab in Illinois, because $30 American, not in rand. You know, convert that into rand. But if I'm paying $60 for medical prices, 60 to 75 American dollars for 1 gram of extract, and a dab is 0.2. Let's say I do a quarter of that. I quarter it. I have 4.25 dabs. So that's each dab is $15. Like, that's no markup. You're not gonna like heat up the rig or anything.
But $15 market price, not $15 from the concentrate guy who probably cost him $5 to make it.
Oh, no, that guy doesn't have a license, man. He can only make the concentrate. He can't sell the concentrate.
But they say you get the good prices.
Concentrates for about $8 to $10. If you find good guys at good social clubs, you'll find it for that. About $8 to $10, you'll get a shatter or a wax or a bubble hash or something.
Nope. You got to multiply that price by 6. Those are my prices. But it's legal. You can buy it. Like I showed you the website. I can right now go to that website, buy that, get in my car, go pick it up. Because you can't get delivery in Illinois. Not yet. But eventually, when we do have delivery, I can buy it from the dispensary. They'll come in, and then they'll probably just drop it off, make sure that I have my card if I got my medical, or, you know, that I'm over 21.
Is that the kind of structure you guys will be having, you think, as far as right now with the government figuring out the market? Are they going to create a concentrate and flower market for you guys?
I think they're going to do their absolute best to completely stifle any development, any medical use, any industrial use. The goal of the judgment itself was just to tell us to go back home and sit in your corner and smoke your cannabis, but don't pester us about a commercial use or industrial manufacturing from hemp fibers or anything. Our government has no interest in developing this beyond the fact that if anyone gets a medical license, it's with the most difficulty and with the most amount of refusals possible by our government. There is no interest in this government. There are individuals who express interest, but the system does not want to see it because our government is controlled by the big pharmaceutical companies and other corporations that benefit from the prohibition.
And in the meantime, little guys will get rich, right?
Yeah, right. No, there's nobody. There's no little guys. Chris, what are you showing us down there? Let's blow Chris up.
Okay. Well, this book, this booklet, it's just short of about 100 pages, and it was written by a very influential woman of cannabis here in South Africa, Mersel Clark, half of the Dagga couple, and the Fields of Green for All, and lots of other people contributed to this 100 pages of one of the best frameworks of a cannabis policy, and it includes rural farmers, it includes businesses, medical, recreational, and it's called the Full Spectrum Manifesto for Policy Reform, Cannabis in South Africa, the People's Plant, and you can get it from fieldsofgreenforall.org.za.
Fascinating. Well, I got something to plug real quick. If you guys haven't liked and subscribed yet, you should, because and then click the bell. You'll get notice of this tomorrow. It's the dry trim versus wet trim challenge. And you just look at how silly that thumbnail is. Our thumbnail guy, Net Art is his handle, Slack channel. He outdid himself. So tomorrow, because one of the things, and I guess we can talk to you guys about this because you're both growers. When you harvest, how do you trim your marijuana or your Dagga or your cannabis, as I like to call it? How do you trim it? Do you hang it to dry, or do you just trim it wet? Chris, you want to start on that one?
Sure. I've literally planned my entire life around trimming, really, because it's a hell of a big job. So it's either wet or dry. I just try and keep up with it. I really do. It's not. I don't really have a preference. I think there are much better ways to trim, either dry certain strains with dry trimming and certain strains with wet trimming. But harvest season, I just try and keep on top of it all.
What about you, Jeremy? How do you like to trim your cannabis? Oop, that's
up in the rafters of my garage, and I do take off all the leaves except the sugar leaves, which I allow to dry and kind of go around the buds themselves. And I will pick them off later, but I prefer to have the sugar leaves stay on the plant. And I'm also one of those growers who passes on the seeds of my strain to the next season and other growers. And so I leave all my males in. I select the best males based on terpenes and strength of growth. And then I let them pollinate the females, and I take the seeds out of my smoke. I roll them out on a piece of paper and I put them in, catalog them, and then smoke what is left, the flowering material. So I'm happy with the way I do things. It's not quite the connoisseur's approach.
The CBD movement in America, that's only about really 10 years old. Charlotte's Web was a strain that really only came around in 2011. And that really helped push the needle for legalization. Does South Africa have any CBD or medical cannabis initiatives that might speed forward the full legalization?
I'm not a great believer in single extracts from this plant. CBD is appreciated by more conservative folks who are rather dealing with anxiety and overactive type of children, but people who perhaps have epilepsy as well. But I believe that the whole plant extract, like Rick Simpson oil, is always a better choice to go with. for whatever ailment, because there is a synergy between the THC and the CBD. But CBD apparently is available in certain pharmacies in South Africa for those who want to buy it. Yeah.
You know, I really appreciate both your guys' work in South Africa for both the message and just bringing South Africa up to the 21st century at least. Do you guys think South Africa become cannabis? What Switzerland's is for chocolate?
Definitely, yes, definitely, without a doubt. We're big contenders for the top best cannabis in the world.
Nice.
Well, chocolate is legal. Chocolate is legal, so the world will have to legalize for our weed to become the cannabis like Switzerland's chocolate. But I mean, South Africa selling to America is probably trying to sell ice cream to Inuit, and or us, because you guys are right up there with all of your movement and the legalization initiatives in your states and legal weed and the strains that you've got. I don't think South Africa could really sell too much to America.
Hey, Chris, what does, speaking of that legalization aspect in South Africa, what does the legalization as a political process look like in South Africa?
However, I think that personally, my own opinion is just hell of a corrupt. I think it'll fall in hands of business and become a big business. I'm just hoping that they keep it decriminalized for personal use, and they adhere to laws of privacy, and people are allowing to create their own small craft businesses around cannabis in communities.
It's awesome.
Awesome. Chris and Jeremy, I know it's late over there. Thank you so much for joining us today. Where can we go to get involved with South Africa NORML or the Dagga Party?
The Dagga Party's website is www.daggaparty.org.za. And you can also meet us up, join our Facebook page, Facebook.com/Dagga Party, all one word.
Awesome. And then, all right, yeah, we'll throw those links in the description. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you on Wednesday.
Thanks, guys.
Lauren, Jeremy, thank you.